people for birthing people.
Stop calling them birthing people. Because this just sounds stupid. Like, I don't know why I'm so triggered by this, but it's irritating. Like, with this, for like less than maybe 1/5 the population thinks like this and is offended by everything. Meanwhile, there were 9 people that were killed in a mass shooting, but people seem to be more offended by inclusive language like breastfeeding. It really makes you think. Like, I'm sick and tired of the mass shootings in our society. I'm sick and tired of people being overly sensitive. So Coca-Cola wants us to act less white. And how are we supposed to do that? Drink less Jack Daniels, eat less jerky, cut down on our NASCAR and our Red Bull. It's one thing to be gender inclusive, but people these days are being just silly with it, in my opinion.
Birthing people and a black birthing person. Stop this. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to the Death Star. And as per usual, before we do the thing, this video is sponsored by Grounds News. Now, we've talked a lot on this channel about the erasure of fathers, of masculinity, of bear-killing, axe-wielding, bearded Viking men. Where are all of you? Not married to me. That's where. Side note, I feel like this is why I'm very into Assassin's Creed Valhalla at the moment, because they made the main character a mega babe, and I'm not mad about it. But what we've never really discussed before is the way that wokeness is attacking women. A concept I'm betting a bunch of people have either never thought about or...
Yeah, when you're so woke, it comes off as perverted, or you're literally doing the exact opposite of what you're trying to do. But could you imagine for 1 second trying to be so woke and not offend anyone? We're going to be gender inclusive, that you actually end up offending one gender or another. This is just society saying we don't want to be offensive, but you can't control who gets offended by what you do or say. Everyone's offended by something to some degree.
or simply don't agree with. And before you think I'm turning into a feminist lunatic, hear me out, because I too was full of question marks to begin with. And honestly, finding myself agreeing with certain feminist groups has been a bit of a weird experience. So there's that. But over the last couple years, I've noticed, and I'm sure many of you have too, that there has been an uptick in companies, brands, social media platforms, the media, academia, and even government institutions changing language to accommodate a push for gender neutrality and inclusion.
Gender neutral language. Look, when it comes to pronouns, to a degree, I get it and I support it, but this is getting a bit much. Like, it's one thing if they identify as a sparkly purple unicorn dragon, and they're getting upset because you didn't identify their pronouns. I mean, they identify as an attack helicopter, and you clearly said you're not a machine made for the military, you're a person. Were you dropped on your head? But when people get offended, they do stupid shit like overreact, storm, riots, all this dumb shit. And it's like, Heaven forbid somebody gets offended. You know what offends me? Mass shootings are overly sensitive society. And there ain't a damn thing I can do about it except bitch and complain. So that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Of people who identify as women, not to mention other areas such as sports, law and order, medicine, and so on that have been shifted to accommodate society's new, broader definition of women, sometimes to the detriment of biological women themselves. And that's what I'd like to talk about today, how wokeness has led to and continues to lead to the erasure of women. But before we get on and traverse this path of sads, let's hear from today's sponsor, Ground News. It's a Saturday morning. You open the social media platform of your choice and then spend the next 30 minutes reading through the headlines of the day. But let me let you in on a little secret. Come close. Closer. 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 Whatever you read is wrong. Well, it's not that it's wrong, it's that the media is biased. Journalists like to present their opinions as objective, and nobody can be bothered fact-checking anymore. Smiling at women is sexist. Which is why Ground News is so...
Shit, Sydney. That's funny. Smiling at feminists is not sexist. Yeah, because nobody likes being fact-checked. Let's be real. Democrats love to fact-check Republicans and vice versa, but only when they're right. Because when they know they're wrong, they'll keep their mouth shut. And both sides do it. Republicans and Democrats will fact-check each other only when they know they're right. Because when they're wrong, nobody likes being made to look like an idiot. And nobody likes being proven wrong, but there you go. Just being right might offend somebody. Depending on which right you're talking about. Was that a right-wing joke? Yes, it was. Go down to certain states that are primarily Democrat, and if you admit to being a Republican, they all look at you like, it's like, whoa, dude, I'm allowed to have a political opinion. And you can be independent and down the middle, and people are still offended by it. Like,
so important. It gives you, the reader, the ability to see the political biases of thousands of news outlets from across the political spectrum and how those news outlets cover the same story. Think of it as like Fox News compared to CNN, but like all the time. Ground News also doesn't use algorithms to deliver you news that it thinks you'll like. Its objective is to give you as many tools as it can to draw your own conclusions about the news around you, giving you a more well-rounded perspective. So if you're like me and you are in fact tired of not knowing what's happening most of the time, then click the link in the description and download the Ground News app for free. Like me and you are in fact tired of not knowing what's happening most of the time, like me and you are in fact tired of not knowing what's happening most of the time, then click the link in the description and download the Ground News app for free. Do this and you'll help a baby fairy get its wings. In 2001, a female police officer called Moira Smith was killed in the terror attacks on New York's World Trade Center. She was one of 23 police officers who died while leading people to safety.
okay, so during 9/11, there was a police officer woman, born female, named Moira Smith, who was tragically killed trying to save people on September 11th. Keep that in mind, because it gets a little choppy.
Glamour magazine named her Woman of the Year after her death and presented the award to her husband. 14 years later, in 2015, Glamour awarded the same title to Caitlyn Jenner.
Oh, boy. So Glamour magazine gave Moira Smith this awesome award of Woman of the Year. for her heroism and for her bravery. But 14, 17 plus years later, Caitlyn Jenner gets named Glamour's Woman of the Year. Now, I support trans rights, but don't you think? And Caitlyn Jenner was not born female. She was born as Bruce Jenner, and then she transitioned into what we now call Caitlyn, and that's how we're going to say it as nicely as we can. So when he found out his ex-wife definitely wasn't a lesbian. I'm just busting balls. Calm down. No, I support gay and trans rights. As long as the people are of age and they're old enough and it's consensual, then who cares? You know?
The second transgender woman to be awarded as such after Laverne Cox in 2014. In response to the situation, Moira Smith's husband James returned her award, saying it was insulting to the memory of his wife. In response to Caitlyn Jenner, he asked, "Was there no woman in America or the rest of the world more deserving than this man?"
Oh. Can you blame Mr. Smith for returning his wife's award and then saying it was an insult to her memory to give that award to someone? I mean, comparatively speaking, apples to oranges, it's really not a comparison, dude. But yeah, imagine being, you know what I'm saying? Imagine being a man in his shoes. You lost your wife on 9/11, and she got this amazing award for her courage. You know, you'd be a little salty too, don't you think? Especially if given the circumstances. I support trans rights. But think about it.
I'm kind of surprised that this man was allowed to say any of this at all, and wasn't thrown into the pit of cancelled souls. Not to be confused, of course, with the pit of souls in the movie Hercules, because this is where careers go to die. Now, this sentiment has existed for the better part of 45 years. In 1973, radical feminist Robin Morgan addressed the West Coast Lesbian Conference in LA. She said that she was insulted that a biological man might dress as a woman, be hassled for 5 minutes, and then dare to think he understands the pain of being a woman.
Yeah, exactly. We shouldn't harass people just because they're trans. That's fucked off. However, just because you're a man who turns yourself into a woman and then you get harassed for being trans. Okay, you're not getting harassed for being a woman, you're getting harassed for being a trans. Which to some degree there isn't much difference. You know, women and trans have been treated like crap for years. And now we live in a society, well, if you live in a Western society, but this interview was done in the 70s. This chick was like, hey, wait a second. Men dress up like the opposite sex and get harassed for like 5 minutes and then think they just understand the true pain of a woman. And the truth of it is, no matter how many surgeries you'll get, you'll never understand that. Never. You might come pretty close to replicating a woman. I'm sure surgery as well, but you'll truly never understand, you know.
No, in our mother's names and in our own, we must not call him sister. Today, this attitude continues to be voiced, and many of the women expressing it are labeled TERFs or trans exclusionary radical feminists.
Okay, hear me out. Okay, the point some of these women are trying to make, and we'll address this very carefully. Women have been upper-handed by men for centuries, beaten by men in everything: sports, social economics, gender-based fairness. Men have had more power in society for the longest time. So for a lot of women, it's like, this is where it's frustrating for a lot of cis women, YouTube. You got men who are now identifying as women, and, you know, the struggles are different to a degree. Like, the dude's gonna get harassed for being trans. He's not gonna get harassed for being a woman. That's just how it is. And at the end of the day, there ain't much difference than being harassed for being a woman or being harassed for being trans. It exists in our effed up society. Now it's like this. Would you go to baseball and let the players take performance enhancing drugs to give them an advantage in the game? No, you wouldn't. That's called cheating. This is why transgendered athletes should have their own league. Just ain't enough trans athletes to do it, and not enough sports, you know, kind of thing. So there aren't enough trans athletes out there to make a league for every sport. There was a simpler time growing up in the 90s. We didn't care about pronouns. However, people of the LGBTQ plus community were harassed pretty badly in the 90s. That's the only thing that sucks about it, to be honest, YouTube. But, and to be fair, if women say what I just said, they get labeled a transphobe. And it's like, King Cobra's telling it like it is. No, serious. If women say, well, to be fair, men have not had to endure the centuries of hardship that women have had to endure just for being a woman, having, you know, women make more money than you. And when that happens for a change, men get so insecure. And there's a reason why men get insecure when women make more money. You know, it's because in society, we're taught this sexist attitude that men have to be the, you know, breadwinners and shit. That's bullshit. Because your wife can bring home the bacon too, and if you support each other, you're contributing to a household. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman.
Feminists who believe that anyone born a man retains male privilege in society, even if he chooses to live or identify as a woman.
I'm sorry, but unless you know that person's trans, do you think anyone, I mean, that's an argument we could have separately. don't have as much privilege as we used to. In fact, we have less of it. Women had less privilege, so the solution became, let's take men's privilege away. There's nothing wrong with a man having a feminine side. However, the overall over-feminization of men in our society is a real problem. But then the concept of feminine versus masculine, these concepts change all the time. And these feminists that are quick to point out things like men and their privilege are retained even if they change genders, I disagree. Because women have privilege too. Oh, trust and believe. You want to have that conversation. You call me a sexist asshole for saying it, but it's the truth. Women have just as much privilege in our society as men. The short, nicest way of saying it, if not sometimes a little bit more. And it's because of the whole mothering concept, the whole you're a mother, you're a birth giver, you're a nurturer. So of course women are going to have more privilege in society than men. And that doesn't excuse men from the equation because men have privilege in certain areas where women don't. And it creates this power struggle. It's unnecessary.
The fact that he has a choice means that he can never understand what being a woman is really like. Being that I'm a woman, I feel equipped to tell people what it's like. Scolding hot showers, emotional temper tantrums, bleeding from your Sydney, don't be crass. I wasn't going to say what you thought I was going to say. I was going to say eyes. Ugh, that's even worse. This way of thinking is driven home by infamous comments such as, the hardest part of being a woman is figuring out what to wear.
Oh, the stereotype. I support trans rights, but could you imagine if you lost your wife, who is a hero at saving people's lives on 9/11, and you got this award for being Woman of the Year? It was given to your husband in her memory. Very touching and very sweet, very humble. And then nowhere, a man just steals it from her because he chopped his dick off. That's it. You didn't see Caitlyn Jenner diving into some flaming ass buildings to save some people. You know, the notion that I made is Caitlyn Jenner would have been a lot braver coming out at the height of Bruce Jenner's career. But
Spoken by Caitlyn Jenner to BuzzFeed in 2015.
well, what would you do if you were that husband in that situation? Your wife died fighting and saving lives for her country just to be outdone by a man. Once again, so the point these feminists are making is very true to an extent. Could you imagine if it was reversed? And men were the ones that had to face centuries of oppression. The argument would be flipped. You know it would.
Or in 2016, a British transgender firefighter being nominated for the Fire Service's Woman of the Year and Britain's most influential firewoman. Moves designed to be inclusionary that lead.
Well, at least that, even though that transgender wasn't Caitlyn, to be specific, at least Britain was like, hey man,
A lot of women feeling marginalized and pushed out of their own spaces. And
yeah. Could you imagine men taking over as women and getting all these awards that women fight for their whole lives? You would feel a little marginalized, just a little bit. Wouldn't that get your cyst snatch steaming? All you hear is so I'm boiling some tea. It's like, no, someone's got a steaming snatch. Oh, she's pissed. Look at her. Imagine living in a society where you're told by the opposite gender that they're better than you, and then when you tell them to fuck off, they're being sexist, you get told, oh, you know, and then you get told how it is, and then on top of that, society gives the opposite sex that's bullying you more privilege. Ladies, you with me on this? You know what I'm saying? Now, the second men get a taste of their own fucking medicine, they hate it. And you got decent guys out there who don't deserve to be treated like that, but they get caught in the crossfire because one or two assholes ruins it for a lot of men out there. Trust and believe that. So instead of saying, you know, we'd like to present this Woman of the Year award to this woman, you know, they want to make it about their transgender transformation thing, then say trans woman. Don't just, you know, we want to be gender inclusive about it. Or maybe we don't. When it's a trans woman getting an award for her bravery, living in a generation of people where everyone's got to have an award, everyone's overly sensitive. Here's your award for participating. Good job. I'm sorry, YouTube, but that's just the goddamn truth. Everyone's gonna feel special. Everyone's gonna feel included. Everyone's gonna feel like everyone's a bunch of goddamn snowflakes. Now, there's certain things in society, if you're grossed out by it, perfectly natural, right? But being offended because someone said breastfeeding, because apparently men can now lactate, they have surgeries for that. It's just like, no. I do not judge. Okay, if you want to be trans, that's good on you. Whatever you identify as, he, she, them, they, that's your choice, right? But you have to be 18 or older and have gone through puberty as the assigned gender you were born. Okay, denying and doing the whole puberty blockers thing, no, that's so bad for your body. You could risk getting all kinds of cancers, and it's just, yeah, no, that's not it. So imagine for 1 second, you got women growing up being told by their mother, their grandmother, their aunt, or any female that's much older than them in their life, you can do anything you want to, and you can beat the boys in anything, right? Just to have a boy come in and identify as trans, and they get the proper surgeries, but they still, and that's not privilege, that's just genetics, okay? I'm sorry, but I get so tired of being told that having testosterone gives me privilege. You know, how would you feel if men said that, you know, women having estrogen automatically gives them a sympathy card? You'd be like, excuse me? A lot of women don't want to feel sorry, don't want you to feel sorry for them because, you know, as Sydney Watson said, I'm not going to be crass. It's not privilege, it's just genetics. I can't control the fact that Mother Nature said we're going to give men, human species, testosterone and give women estrogen. But could you imagine for a second what that's like? No, I can't begin to imagine. And this is the problem with it. Like, I see, as somebody who supports trans rights, I see both sides of where cis women are coming from and where trans women are coming from on this argument. But that's like, crap, we can't call it breastfeeding because people might get offended by the word breast. What's next? We can't call it sperm. We have to call it human gravy because you might offend the sperm whales. Like, you're gonna hurt Moby Dick's feelings, you asshole. I don't see him making this argument for penises and for sperm. We gotta call it a human hose. We can't call it a penis because women can get those too now, you know? Stop, you're giving them ideas. By them, I mean the idiots who come up with this crap. The same assholes brought to you in part by the assholes who created reverse sexism and mansplaining. But as far as an actual feminist talking point goes, I fully agree with women on this issue. Like, and then if women go out and say, hey, wait a minute, don't you think this is kind of sexist and degrading to actual women? They get called a transphobe for it. And it's like, and the truth be told, the women who are born trans women don't understand the struggle, what it's like to be that other person, you know? I don't understand it. So, you know, and that's why I don't judge. You know, I got a friend who gets more attention dressing up as a chick than he does as the gender he is. Dressing up as a You know, I got a friend who gets more attention dressing up as a chick than he I got a friend who gets more attention dressing up as a chick than he does as the gender he is. And he has a preferred name, and that's cool. I don't judge him for it, man, you know. The women have had to work twice as hard in a male-dominated world, on top of being expected to be the prettier of the sexes, because the female form is worshipped in our society. So there you go.
And all the while, on the other side, the transgender lobby and its supporters argue that trans women are no different to biological women and should be treated as such. That they're
Yeah, but there's one slight difference, and trans women want to say they're no different than biological women. Yeah, except you weren't born a woman. You had to get surgery to become one. That's the difference. Okay? I'm sorry, but I said it. People are going to be like, oh my God, Cobra, you fucking asshole. And, well, I'm not trying to be too crass, but could you imagine being born as a woman and going through puberty for the first time and being scared shitless because you're bleeding and you have no idea why? And someone has to see, that awkward female to female talk. Ew. Or like you're a female being raised by a single father who has no clue what the hell he's doing when he makes the best of it. And he's like, this would be a conversation for your mother who's not here right now, but let me give her a jangle. And he's like, I gotta call the ex-wife for this crap. Mm-hmm. Yeah, hello. Yeah, your daughter's having some issues, like, I don't want, and then of course, she's feeling embarrassed because she doesn't want to talk about it, and so it's just this Would you ever see a woman transition into a man and be allowed to play men's sports? They'd have to allow it, otherwise it proved my point, wouldn't it?
Experiences should be reflected and represented and held in.
But you might say I'm being violent with my speech or phobia, whatever. Dude, screw that. If you let your hatred for something control you to the point, where what the hell is gender fluid? I didn't know liquids had genders. So what's the gender of water? Because water is a fluid. H2O, no, he didn't.
In the same esteem as their biological counterparts. And more importantly, as Glamour stated in response to Jenner's award, they recognize women with a variety of backgrounds and experiences. But as the saying goes, the road to hell is a variety of backgrounds and experiences. But as the saying goes, they recognize women with a variety of backgrounds and experiences. But as the saying goes, recognize women with a variety of backgrounds and experiences. But as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and what might have started off as inclusion for many women has resulted in the erasure of what it means and what it is to be a woman.
And here's the tricky part. Sydney, you're absolutely right. What it means to be a woman is being erased from our society at the same rate as what it means to be a man and to be masculine. You have a group of people out there who are like, oh, you like the color blue? Well, that's toxic because you're a typical male. But when a man likes pink, you know what they say then? Oh, colors are just gender neutral and they're not gender exclusive. You need to quit being a bigot. Someone's personal opinion on their favorite color. Some people like purple. Some people like green. Big fucking deal. But that's my point. So, like, people get offended, you know?
Just the other day, I was perusing Twitter and I came upon this tweet. Cis womanhood is violence. For those of you who don't understand psycho speak, this means that biological womanhood is violence. And people wonder why I want to fling myself into a volcano.
What? You have got to be fucking kidding me. What? That was gross. Excuse me. We're good. Yeah, psycho speak is accurate. We're good. Yeah, psycho speak is accurate, Sydney. God damn it. Hold on. Cis womanhood is violence. Cis women's attachment to genitalia is violence. Cis women's pandering to patriarchy is violence. Cis women's notions, femininity, are violent. Womanhood is a construct that is not exclusive to cis women. Well, the legendary King Cobra JFS, we've already had a conversation about this crap. Tell that to the millions of women who were born. How is being born a woman and then saying to yourself you identify as the gender you're born? How is that violence? If they're not personally attacking you because you are trans, then it's not violent, you stupid, retarded son of a bitch. Well, the people out there who are like, they hit the crack pipe, the green crack, the weed pipe a little too hard, and they get super fucking stoned, and it causes their brain to just fart for a second. And they're like, hey, wait a second. It causes their brain to just fart for a second. And they're like, hey, wait a second. But here's the problem with it. Trans people have been discriminated and attacked and continue to be attacked and discriminated against in our society. Granted, they have more rights than they do used to, but still. And we shouldn't attack people for being straight or gay or lesbian or queer or trans. You know, we shouldn't attack people for that shit. It's ridiculous. We shouldn't attack people. We shouldn't harass people for identifying as their birth gender. Well, why are we calling it cisgender? Because I feel like cis is a medical exclusive. There are some people who develop a cyst, and it's not fun getting that shit removed. You can't just call it birth gender. Why are we calling it cisgender? Like sister gender? Is that why? I don't get it.
Women's attachment to genitalia is violence. Cis heterosexual women's pandering to patriarchy is violence.
Again, if they're not going out your way, if it, okay, if they're not going out of their way to harass you or be violent towards you because you are trans, and how is it violence? You can't just throw something in there and be like, this is violence, because if there's no violence being portrayed. Yes, but okay, to be fair, there are some people out there who harass and beat up trans people, and it's messed up. People get beat up just for being trans or non-binary, and that's pretty fucked up. And there's nothing you can do about it. to try to end the hatred and bigotry in our society.
Cis women's notions of femininity are violent. Womanhood is a construct that is not exclusive to cis women. Again, to translate, this is saying that womanhood is a construct and not specific to biological women. In a lot of ways, this certainly sums up many of the views of our friends over at Woke Island, not to be confused with Feminist Island. They communicate, but they're not the same. And on one hand, there is this prevailing attitude that what makes a woman is not her anatomy, but rather how she feels, acts, and dresses, which might more or less explain Caitlyn Jenner's comments. Or the many disturbing comments I read of transgender women saying they feel most like a woman when they're being sexually objectified.
Wow.
Oh, Dr. Phil! The Women's March, for example, had people asking to remove pussy hats and uterus art because they view it as exclusionary to non-biological women. I mean...
Yeah, but what? What? So you have to remove uterus and art of vaginas from the Women's March because that would be gender inclusive? What? To none? Wow. See, if you were just like the women you're trying to be, you wouldn't get offended when someone says otherwise. You know, or you wouldn't get offended if, like, someone tried to put up pictures, you know, of vaginas and shit at a Women's March. Because technically you have one too, so why would you be offended by it? Is what you know.
Why even have a Women's March if gender doesn't exist anyway? In an interview, what...
Yeah. Sydney Watson, that's kind of a smart ass but fair point. Why even have a Women's March if gender doesn't exist? The problem with this is everyone's opinion on this doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it's just all opinions.
One of the organizers said that not every woman has a vagina, and not every person who has a vagina is a woman. Not every Coke is a Coke. Some Coke is Pepsi. Friendly reminder, if you wear a pussy hat or center your feminism around genitals, you're being a teensy bit transphobic and alienating.
Okay. Someone tweeted this on their Twitter. Hope the hashtag Women's March New York City goes well today. Friendly reminder, if you wear a pussy hat or center your feminism around genitals, you're being a teensy bit transphobic and alienating, and you might want to reconsider. Reconsider what? Okay, if you want to become a woman and you are transgender, then that's how some women identify. Like, what? How is it transphobic? Oh, because someone hasn't had the surgery yet? Oh, wow. They're not saying you can't have the surgery. Look, it'd be one thing if they were holding these people down, showing the pictures of pussy in their face and going, you can't have the surgery. Hey, look at our pussy hats. That'd be a bit transphobic, but all they're doing is marching with a hat or a piece of artwork or a sign. Is that why they call it the labia? Because it's women's lib? Okay, you are obnoxious today, Cobra. Oh, labia. That was a really bad joke I made. I'm sorry, that was a really bad joke.
And you might want to reconsider. In this same vein, when this side of the argument does refer to genitalia. In this same vein, and you might want to reconsider. In this same vein, when this side of the argument does refer to genitalia, sometimes they decide that's all that defines us. Or they go out of their way to deny the existence of intensely, uniquely personal female characteristics and traits. Women have been referred to as vagina owners, people with a cervix, people who menstruate, vulva owners, not to be confused with the car, pregnant and lactating people. These terms have been used by government institutions like the CDC, NIH, and the White House, and actually the UN, but we don't really care about the UN.
And respectful of Black women and birthing people. The maternal mortality crisis among Black birthing people in the United States. Black birthing people and birthing people. For birthing people, Black birthing people, and a Black birthing person. For all birthing persons in Louisiana.
Some of you might even...
We don't need to come up with new terms for terms that already exist. If you're offended because someone is calling that person a woman, regardless if they're trans or if they were born cis woman or not, get over yourself, you fucking wanker. Like, there are people who get offended by the dumbest of things. I watch the news. I get a text message from my fans. Did you hear what happened today in California? What? Oh, not again. God damn it. Turn on YouTube and people are now offended by the United States flag and by the term breastfeeding. What? So to cope with the depression, I'll make a video, I'll make wands, work on my music, you know.
I remember recently when the NHS in the UK told midwives to refer to breastfeeding as chest feeding.
What? Because we got to be more... look, I'm all for supporting trans rights, but you can cut your dick off, but heaven forbid someone says breastfeeding. Because you'd be a transphobe if you didn't say it like that. Who fucking cares if people want to call it chest feeding? Honestly, it's stupid, and who gives a fuck if anyone wants to call it breastfeeding? The whole thing is just stupid. Except once again, we have men in a hypocritical society trying to erase the idea of women and womanhood. Because never once in the development of humans, since the first human beings, have men ever breastfed their children. The answer is no. And now they're encouraging midwives to call it chest feeding instead of breastfeeding to be more trans-friendly. Considering you get boobs when you become a transgendered woman from a man to a woman, how is it offending them in the first place? Like,
in an effort to be more inclusive. Staff have been instructed that breast milk should be replaced with phrases human milk or chest milk, or milk from the feeding parent. Milk from the feeding parent.
yeah, no.
Did you know that the average adult has 5 to 20 pounds of toxic poop in their body at any given moment? Seems crazy, right?
That was like the worst randomest ad. What? Toxic poop. You know what's toxic shit? The way our fucking society does this crap.
I don't know. I don't think it's absurd to say that women and mothers are the ones who get pregnant and carry babies. I'm yet to meet a man who can do this. Can a man get pregnant? No. No, they cannot. Women are sometimes referred to as womixins.
Oh my god, yeah, I remember this crap when someone spelled woman with an X instead of an A, so it was WOMXNS, History Month. I'm like, what is this crap? Womixin. Could you imagine if men were just offended by the crap that had their gender in it? Like, could you imagine, ladies, if we were like, you can't call it femme, and then, because it sounds too much like men, you must call it March of Girls' Rights. You can't call it women's rights because men don't have near the same amount of rights. It's no, dude. That get annoying as shit, ladies. You know I'm right.
Womixin. I don't know. I don't know what this is. This is not
Mixins and fixins.
This is not English. Anyway, it's a word designed to dually include people who identify as women and non-binary, or in a more radical feminist sense. The X assists in removing the word men from the equation.
You know why they added an X to the Womixin? Because a lot of these women have ex-boyfriends that they really fucking hate, which means they generally hate men in general. So they're like, hey, you hate men, all your exes are a piece of shit. X, that's it. We'll call it Womixin. Here's Wom who has X, and she's sick and tired of it. Put it all together, Womixin.
Entirely. In mid-2020, J.K. Rowling tweeted about the term people who menstruate, saying, I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wumbin, Whipund, Woomud? People were quick to accuse her of transphobia, which led to her doubling down, saying that while she supports the plight of transgender individuals, her life has been shaped by her being a female. If sex isn't real, then the lived reality of women globally is erased.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. When people accused J.K. Rowling of being a transphobe because she refused to give in to some Generation Z fucking younger millennial bullshit of making up stupid terms and going along with it kind of thing, reverse sexism, excuse me, Can Crush for the fans. You don't have to donate $1 or $2 to PayPal, but if you do, I'll give you a shout out. Channel. No, I made some boneless pork that turned out really good. Took out a boneless pork, cut strips into it, so it fanned out a little bit, smothered it in butter, sprinkled out that Rusk County meat seasoning, poured a splash of Coca-Cola on top, baked it in the oven. It's tender, sweet. And this is the argument, excuse me, women are making. If you do not identify as trans and you are a woman and you identify you as a woman, excuse me, if you as a woman identify as the gender you are assigned, then your whole life is shaped based off of that reality. Versus people who grew up and were born men and for whatever reason decide, you know, that they're trans. Phones on airplane mode. Oh, well. You know how many women, men have gotten pregnant and then left, said they don't want to be a part of that kid's life, forcing that mother to be a single mom raising a kid. Just to have a man, literally, come in and say, just because he got his dick chopped off, all of a sudden, you know. And don't get me wrong, okay? I support trans rights. However, if we're going to have a discussion like this, stop bringing race into it, for one, and calling it birthing people. No. Regardless of how you feel about the situation, we call them women or woman. We call them womb-en. They are, you know, or womb earls. Womb earls, girls with womb. But then if we say that, some women are born without uteruses, so then you might offend them, and it's like, so it's like at some point, nothing you can do. You're going to offend somebody. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not really hurting anyone either way you shape it. If you want to call it breastfeeding or chest feeding, it doesn't matter. As long as you're not violently attacking somebody at the end of the day over it, who cares? Bigger problems in our society.
JK and JK Rowling stands for just kidding. For many people, it's hard to disagree. If what makes women unique is in fact not unique, then what precisely links us together?
If gender isn't real, there is no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. Yeah, if you're saying that gender is not real, then there is no same gender attraction. If you're saying that gender isn't real, then the lived reality of women and men globally is erased. And J.K. Rowling tweets out that she loves and knows several people who are trans, but erasing the concept of gender removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth. No, it isn't. How are you supposed to identify as the opposite gender if the idea, the concept of gender is removed? That's something to think about. No, there are people say you shouldn't be gender neutral. Yeah, but without the concept of gender, then people who are trans could not identify as the opposite. Opposite what? Opposite gender, exactly. So you cannot completely eliminate the concept of gender from our society, even if you're trying to, gender inclusive.
Reality of women globally is erased. The JK in JK Rowling stands for just kidding. For many people, it's hard to disagree. If what makes women unique is in fact not unique, then what precisely links us together? If, as our friend here says, that womanhood is a construct and not specific to biological women, then what characteristics do we even share? Many women, Rowling included, have argued that this kind of language effectively expunges the experiences of women, what makes us women, and completely dehumanizes us. Not to mention denies our unique traits and characteristics. On one hand, our body parts apparently mean absolutely nothing. They do not dictate anything. While on the other hand, they're the only way to which we're referred. When we say that being a woman is more than biology, that it's this immutable thing that we can't quite put our finger on, we're told that it, in fact, can extend to anyone. When we disagree with that, we're called transphobic. When we say that our chromosomes and our anatomy also defines us, we're also called transphobic. When we say that it's both biology and more than biology,
yeah, transphobic. It's become the new sexist. Think about it. Feminists and overly sensitive people love to throw out words like sexist, misogynistic, and transphobic.
A radical leftist head explodes, and then another radical leftist comes along and slurps it up because they've been called transphobic. When we say that it's both biology and more than biology, a radical leftist head explodes, and then another radical leftist comes along and slurps it up because they better absorb as many brain cells as they can. What's notable about these, they better absorb as many brain cells as they can. Comes along and slurps it up because they better absorb as many brain cells as they can. What's notable about these language changes is that they don't really seem to apply to men. For example, I don't see anyone out here calling men sperm carriers or man pickle havers or XY chromosomes with beard hair. And so by all of this logic, the wokies bring me to an argument I read on a feminist blog. By today's standards and the few things I've mentioned here, it really does feel like being a woman isn't defined by and really doesn't mean anything. If male humans who identify as women are women, then the only common characteristic across the group called women is that they're all human. There is no other characteristic that this group universally shares. However, if you define a woman as an adult human female, then there is a characteristic that everyone in this group shares. They are genetically programmed to produce ova and bear young. Whether they do eventually reproduce and whether their female anatomy works or not isn't the issue. Even non-functioning female anatomy is still female anatomy. What is the common characteristic that is universally true across the group of all human adult females and humans who are living as women that distinguishes this category from other categories? I do not believe that such a characteristic exists. If there is nothing this group has universally in common, then the word woman has no meaning. It could just be replaced by human. The trans community wants us to believe that the common characteristic across the group woman is that these individuals all identify as women. But if they identify as women, that leads us back to the original question. What is this thing woman they identify as? Surely if they identify as a woman, then they can describe what a woman is. If no one can describe what a woman is, then how can anyone know if they are one? The definition, a woman is anyone who identifies as a woman, is a circular definition that leads nowhere. And this lack of definition of what it is to be a woman, what it means to be a woman, what characteristics define us, and so on, is leading to a series of other issues, not only in relation to the erasure of women, but a myriad of other situations as well. Wow, didn't see that one coming. Goodness.
Hey, if you want to identify as a woman, you should have to pass a test first. Can you start arguments about nothing, just the dumbest, most randomest thing on the planet, and find a way to make it feel like it's the man's fault? Like you're pissed off. The light didn't turn green when he wanted it to, ladies, and somehow that's your husband's fault. Who's clearly halfway across town at his own job, working, going, and you call him in the middle of his shift, like, okay, so it's your fault, huh? Like, what did I do? The goddamn light didn't turn green when I needed it to, and I was late for work. And it's like, okay, I'm sorry that your boss doesn't understand traffic sucks. Okay, and that can be solved, ladies, by getting up. If you have to get up a couple minutes earlier than you normally do, you know, that comes down to time management, ladies and gentlemen. If it takes you 20 minutes to get to your destination and you want to be on time, and you leave like 35 to 40 minutes early, you could have like an extra 20 to 15 minutes to just hang out and check your phone before you gotta do your thing, you know. You better showing up 15 minutes early than 15 minutes late in most circumstances. And you'll see women and men sitting on traffic lights going, oh, come on, you stupid fucking light. Turn. Oh, God damn. Of course that one on the other side goes. And everyone's light goes green, and yours, Wayne, is the last one. You're like, finally. And you slam on the gas, and you just go taking off. And you hit every fucking red light within a 10-block radius. And it happens so much that you get to the last green lights before you turn into your job or what have you, and it just automatically turns green because you're already 15 minutes late, so what's the point? By that point, you have a small aneurysm, like, hey, okay, now it turned green. You fucking asshole. No, but you should have to pass a test before you can call yourself a woman. Because women are crafty when it comes to arguing. They can tell you 2 + 2 = fish, and you're like, oh, actually, honey, it equals 4. But they will craft a way to tell you that you're wrong and you're a piece of shit sexist for arguing with them and that she's right. And eventually you're just thinking to yourself, this is the dumbest argument on the planet, so you're like, no. You don't want to have it, so finally you just agree with her. Then after the argument's over, you're like, you know what? Maybe it does equal fish. And you just, let's face it, you don't want to sleep on the couch. Some part of you wants to cuddle with your woman, so you just agree with her. The mother thinks she's right because, you know, you don't like fighting with your wife slash girlfriend, and, yeah, the lack of that sucks. Which is funny because when you're a young man in your prime, you'll spend most nights begging your wife to fuck you, but then by the time your dick stops working and she's going through hot flashes and menopause and all she could do is think about fucking the shit out of you, your dick don't work. All you want to do is watch the Weather Channel. Ain't life a bitch like that? That's got to be sexually frustrating for both people in that respect.
I've predicted this one. Is it necessary for you to always be this sarcastic? It's the only way I can feel. The inclusion of transgender athletes in women's sports, for example, is a consistent but growing point of contention. Female athletes from all over argue that biological men have an advantage over their female competitors and therefore should not be playing in female leagues. This debate has captured America, in the very least, with an intense push and pull about what's fair and who should be allowed to play in women's leagues, with female athletes consistently arguing that it's taking opportunities away from them.
Yes, it is. Right. No, I'm serious, you two. It's ridiculous. Could you imagine? Would they let women compete against men in transgender sports? If a woman transitioned into a man, became the first trans man athlete, probably not. But women are now living in a world that is just as competitive with the opposite sex as it is for men. Here's the kicker of it. Women and men are both told if you cannot beat the opposite sex, you're weak. You're this, you're that. It's the same concept. And it feeds that power dynamic. So instead of working together as a team and understanding gender and racial equality, it's, oh, if you can't beat a woman in sports, you're a pussy. Yeah, well, if you can't beat a man in sports, you're weak. You're not a real woman. And it's like, shut the fuck up.
While on the other hand, the transgender lobby argues that transgender women athletes are no different to their biological counterparts and should be allowed to play. People who do not identify as men being allowed in women's bathrooms and change rooms is another area where people take issue. Male rapists can identify as women and be recorded as such in crime statistics in Scotland. Male criminals can identify as women and change to female-only prisons. One writer I read asked,
and this is the kind of crap that gives the whole trans movement a bad name.
how can crime be recorded in any substantial, accurate, and meaningful way when the perpetrator is allowed to assume a different identity? Why should women assume responsibility for male crimes? What does this imply for the sentencing and punishment phase? The 2016 Dear College letter that changed the Title IX definition of sex here in the United States to include transgender individuals let biological males take educational opportunities, leadership roles, and athletic awards that the law was supposed to secure for women. Female hygiene products, such as Always, removed the female symbol from its packaging as a sign of inclusion. A transgender model in the UK headed a period campaign in 2018 showing that all kinds of people get periods. In 2018, a banking boss who sometimes wears a wig to work was named among the top 100 women in business. After the passage of Bill C-16 in Canada, many have argued that a woman's status is no longer based on her biology or chromosomes. It is based on whether or not she expresses herself as female. The
Stop.
question then becomes if being a woman can be anything. Isn't that also saying it means nothing? In this quest for inclusion and gender neutrality, it's not hard to see and understand that many women are feeling pushed out of their own spaces. And as biological women, they're feeling erased. So I ask the question again. If being a woman is a construct, if it's not specific to biological sex, then what specifically does it mean? What links us together? What is this? In response to this perspective, a prevailing series of arguments on the other side is that we now live in a world where people identify as neither male nor female, or have gone through the gender reassignment process. It doesn't hurt anyone to change terminology to be more sensitive to these groups. And apparently it also doesn't hurt us to expand the definition of women to include more people. I mean, yeah, the fact of the matter is that language changes. It's why no.
Yeah, but who the fuck? You two. I was gonna say, excuse me, sir. Excuse me. What do you identify as? Are you a trans, non-binary, hermaphrodite, vegan, unicorn, attack helicopter? Okay, you are. Well, what are your pronouns? Some days you prefer to be called it. Some days you prefer to be called them, they. Okay. As long as you're not going after certain people of a certain age, then who cares? As long as the people who are with you are participating consensually, and not only is it consensual, but they're of age and it's consensual.
No one sounds like this anymore.
Quat way Gardena Nyar Dagum Feud Kuninga Thrim.
Actually, you know what? I take sounding like that over words like mansplain and manterruption.
Quat way Gardena Nyar Dagum Feud Kuninga.
But much of what we're seeing today, at least from my perspective, feels not only deeply offensive, but also very contrived. When politicians are being suspended on social media platforms because they're saying that men can't get pregnant, it's hard to not view this as a denial of basic human biology, a denial of motherhood and womanhood. And in relation to this particular conversation within this particular topic, when I went to look up how many trans men actually gave birth in the last couple of years, I really wasn't surprised at all by the numbers that I found. Full disclosure, I couldn't find any information on how many trans men give birth in the United States because they're still logged as females when they deliver a baby. But I did find some numbers from Australia. According to figures compiled by Medicare in Australia, one of the few national surveys, 75 people who identified as male gave birth naturally or by a C-section in 2016, and 40 in 2017. Now there could very well be more, we don't know, but going off the numbers that we do have and knowing that around 300,000 women gave birth in 2017, that's 0.01% of all births coming from trans men. So we are, in essence, changing our comprehension of not only womanhood and motherhood, but also our language to accommodate 0.01% of people. And there's something to be said for how destructive that is. On a personal front, I want to be really clear. I'm not a birthing person. I find it offensive. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. It is not representative of me as a woman and what my body can do and the motherhood.
Thank you. Because women are so much more than birthing people. My point exactly, Sydney Watson. Because women don't want to be known for just being able to give birth to children. They want to be known for their accomplishments, their struggles, and their successes. To live in a world where, hey, your success and conquest is celebrated just as much as a man's, and we all in the coexist and get along. But on top of being super competitive with men, they're also super competitive with each other.
That I hope to have later down the line when I decide to make pudding people, and understanding how few people we're talking about here to justify these language changes, it's really hard for me to reconcile altering language to detract from one of the coolest things that women can do: make tiny humans. Of course, with the assistance of XY chromosomes with beard hair. Thank you for your input. As I was writing this video, what occurred to me is that I can express my frustration and sadness at feeling very dehumanized and ostracized as a female. And somehow those feelings are superseded by the wants and needs of the transgender community. And what's funny is that when I express these ideas, I'm called transphobic, which I no doubt will be for making this video in the first place.
So it's either you feel ostracized and dehumanized as the woman because the whole idea and concept of women is being taken away from you. But yeah, you support trans people, cool. But if you don't, and you express your feelings and tell the truth and how you really feel, people get pissed at you and call you a transphobe. Now, I support women and trans rights. I don't care what gender you are.
What's funny about that too is I've repeatedly expressed that I feel a tremendous amount of sympathy for people who do not feel comfortable and happy in their own skin, and do in fact want to be the other sex. I've also stated on more than one occasion that I have no desire to be unkind or go out of my way to be disrespectful to these people simply because they're different from me. But accommodating all of this, in my view, should not come at the detriment of women. Gender neutrality and inclusion should not result in women feeling erased, and women, me included, expressing.
You know, if you're trying to be gender neutral, then erasing women like that isn't very gender neutral, is it? That's still pretty one-sided. You know, that's where the problem lies. Like, you can't be gender inclusive completely without, in some ways, leaving out one side of the argument. Because someone will find a way, I guarantee you, to bitch about it and say, this is offensive to my gender, blah, 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 here's why. Well, what you said was offensive to my gender, blah, 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 here's why.
Our concern and sadness and frustration, again, with feeling marginalized, should not result in us being pushed further to the edge of the cliff. In the end, wokeness is not on the side of women. It is not helping women. It's
No, those are woke tards, not true wokeness.
denying what makes us special and unique and selling us out for retweets on Twitter. And that is utterly ridiculous. Now, before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder that you can download Ground Use for free using the link in the description. Now, I open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? Is motherhood and womanhood actually being erased by your estimation? Do you?
Yeah, just like the masculine men and the feminine woman is being erased from our society and replaced by whatever gobbledygook we have today.
Do you think that this topic is actually being blown completely out of proportion and none of these things I've mentioned really have any impact? Do you think that we are heading in a very bizarre, weird direction as society when it comes to how we talk about and treat women? And what do
Yes.
you generally make of this issue overall?
Let me rewind that a bit.
Do you think that this topic is actually being blown completely out of proportion and
To some
none of these
degree.
things I've mentioned really have any impact?
Some degree, yes. I think people are blown out of proportion on both sides of the argument when it comes to, oh, you're offended because they said breastfeeding and not chest feeding, and you're not being gender inclusive enough. Yeah, but
Do you think that we are heading in a very bizarre, weird direction as society when it comes to how we talk about and treat women? And what do you generally make of this issue overall? As always, if you like the video, hit subscribe and the thumbs up button. If you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so. Just be respectful about it. And I will see you guys next time.
I do appreciate you all watching the video. I honestly don't blame women for feeling marginalized by society when it comes to these issues. As they call it out, they truly feel as women who are born women, they can call it transphobe. Meh. I support trans rights 1000%. However, there are people who are getting offended because someone called it breastfeeding. It's like there are bigger problems with our society. Anyways, YouTube, thank you for watching. I'll catch you later.